Welcome everybody, I'm Didi Verg, the host of miraclesofmind.tv, and today we're here with our very special guest, Kevin Cole. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
No problem. Kevin Cole is a hypnotist and the head NLP trainer and founder of Empowerment Quest. He is considered to be a master when it comes to purposeful empowerment. Kevin lived through a severely dysfunctional childhood, which included being raised by a mother who suffered from severe schizophrenia and passed away when he was only 12 years of age. This led to severe depression, which pushed him to the point of attempting to end his life on 2 separate occasions. At the age of 22, out of desperation to find a better way, and tired of hurting himself and those around him, he began studying the same skills that he now teaches others today. So for 18 years now, Kevin has been helping individuals overcome personal challenges from their past, learn and experience how to live passionately in the present, and discover and live their true purpose in life. So Kevin, you had a bit of a rocky start in your lifetime. Tell us a little bit about how it is that you got yourself through with the things that you teach people today.
Yeah. Well, first of all, congratulations on that was quite a mouthful. Well, that's how I got into this line of work, was because I was in that place. I was that train wreck. And it started with just a little taste of it, a little sample of NLP specifically. I got into more of the traditional hypnosis along the way. But it just started with some NLP, and just really the very beginning of it was learning a simple physiological exercise of literally just the smiling exercise that actually was learned from Paul Ekman, who studied facial expressions, and how they did studies about how they would take clinically depressed patients and just have them literally just smile, right, literally ear to ear for, I don't remember how long or for how many days and how long it was, but they found remarkable things. Go figure. Right. And so I got an experience of it, as opposed to just people telling me something like, oh, this, that, blah, 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 because I wasn't really listening to that. I wasn't listening to like, oh, this will help you, this will help you, this will help you. It was just something I just happened to experience, and I became hooked very fast, because for me, that little taste was absolutely revolutionary, because it helped me to realize that I had control over the way that I felt, and I wasn't necessarily at the mercy of the negative things that had some rough things happen to me. But I wasn't at the mercy of that. I could actually change the way I felt with that context, with just by changing my physiology. And so it opened the door to really just open me up to being like, what else is there? And so I just learned more and more. Yeah.
And you have trained with, I saw the list of people you've trained with. It looks like you sort for the best people in the world.
Well, I did, and wise man learns from his or her own mistakes. Brilliant man learns from mine. Just because I've trained with some big names, and I won't say which big names were necessarily not that great, but some of the best trainers I've trained with are people that you would never have heard of. That you truly. But yes, I have trained with some big names, and I did in the beginning. I was like, okay, I want to learn from the best, and I thought the best was the big names at the time. Yeah. Right. So yeah.
Yeah. So no, it's important that people know that, because everybody in the end is human, and in my course of the lifetime, I've had the opportunity to meet some very big names. Mm-hmm. And I've also had the opportunity to see their faults.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen some brilliant people that were excellent.
Brilliantly messed up.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
And weren't necessarily the best teachers. They were brilliant minds with terrible teaching skills. But go on.
It just speaks to the point that you wanted to help yourself so badly that you were seeking out help from everywhere. You were going to see the best names. And again, of course, you learned. Mm-hmm. But tell us when it comes to people's purpose, because I know that's one of the things you focus on a lot, empowering mm-hmm. people to find purpose, to find meaning. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about why that's important.
Yeah. Well, I just realized along my journey that pain will push us off the couch, and most of our clients come to us Because they're in some kind of pain. Okay, they, whether it's just be stress, whether it be post-traumatic stress, and everywhere in between. It's that pain that pushes us, but it's the pleasure, and I like to chunk that up higher to purpose. That pulls us across the finish line. I think you mentioned you're presenting on weight loss. Yeah. So that
Right.
They walk into your office because they're like, oh, I don't want to be fat anymore. Or so a child said something mean in the grocery store. Saying, look at the fat woman, mommy, whatever. Okay, it's pain that pushes us. But what gets them across the finish line is really learning and to experience to love the process of enjoying life from the inside out as they let go of the weight. So really, it's crucial that we really, as I like to say, discover and learn our true purpose in life, but also, quite frankly, not overcomplicate it either. All too often, people think that, the purpose, there's one purpose, and it kind of reminds me of an example I like to use with my clients actually is if you've ever seen the film City Slickers. Billy Crystal's character goes he's going through this midlife crisis, trying to figure it out. And so he goes to this dude ranch. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen it. But nonetheless, long story shorter, he goes there and he meets this kind of crazy guy, Curly. And Curly is just happy, fulfilled. He seems to have understood his purpose in life. So Billy Crystal's character asks him, says, so what is it? What's it all about? And Curly just simply says to him, he says, it comes down to one thing. Okay, and I want to tell you right here, right now, no, it doesn't come down to just one thing. Okay, it's not well, at least according to my belief. And if it's working for you and you have a different belief, whatever's working. But it's not a predetermined one specific thing. It's really whatever we make it. I'll share with you, quite frankly, my belief of really what our purpose is in life. And don't ask me exactly when it just made sense. It was kind of an evolution for me. But somewhere down the line, I just looked around enough and paid attention enough to recognize that every single organism on this planet, does the same four things.
Okay.
Lives, grows, evolves, and contributes. Okay? I think it's arrogant that us human beings should think that we're different in that way. Okay? With one exception. Okay? We have thumbs.
Okay.
So there must be one more thing there. We got four: lives, grows, evolves, and contributes. And of course that just happens to work out that way, so I like to just make a little humor about it. But I do think there is a very important distinction, which is the fact that we as human beings have emotions. Okay? And who knows? Maybe all these or maybe a tree does have emotions, we don't know. Okay?
Right.
But nonetheless, we know that we do. So my core belief, one of my core beliefs, is that our true purpose in life is really simple. It's to live, grow, evolve, and contribute in ways that feel good, are good for us. Or at least, I like to say everything in moderation. Okay, I'm at the Orleans with a bunch of hypnotists today, so people are probably going to be drinking a little too much. Okay, but nonetheless, it feels good.
Drink,
Exactly, feels good, is good for us, is good for others, or at least not harmful to others.
Right.
And I like to throw in is ideally good for the planet. It's sustainable that way. Okay, it just makes sense to me that that's our purpose in life. So it doesn't matter how we're doing it. We get to choose, and we get to evolve that.
And there is a certain satisfaction that comes from altruism. So research actually shows
contribution. Exactly.
That volunteering just makes people happier.
Absolutely.
And when you're contributing, you're part of a system, and it just feels good.
Absolutely.
There's a lot to feel good about.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the transformations you've seen with people when they have gotten back into alignment with their purpose? And we were speaking before the interview about confidence. Being comfortable with who they are.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Repeat the question for me.
So what are some of the miraculous transformations you've seen with people getting in alignment with their purpose? Because so many of us are, you hear the stories, well, my parents wanted me to be a doctor, and so people, but all I wanted to be was an artist, or all I wanted to be was a mechanic. I heard a story recently about a doctor who just decided, you know what, I've never wanted to be a doctor. My parents wanted me to be a doctor, I just wanted to be a mechanic. And he is happy as a mechanic now. Not making as much money, but he's much happier.
Exactly.
So what have you
Exactly,
seen in terms of people getting back into tune and alignment with their purpose and being comfortable with who they are?
Well, everything. It just life completely shifts. I also have kind of a belief system / methodology that everybody, or a lot of people, they want to figure out their purpose in life. They say like, I just want to figure out my purpose in life, okay? But I do believe there's two core aspects that need to happen first, okay? Not necessarily linearly, but I'll say it linearly anyway, which is that we need to overcome significant challenges in our past if they exist, okay? We don't need to go digging for stuff and creating problems for our clients that weren't there in the first place. Okay, but we do need to help people and ourselves, especially ourselves, quite frankly, to take care of any significant issues from our past, learn and experience how to live passionately in the present, how to feel good. I personally believe that most people don't know how to do that. We know how to do things that will help us to feel good. We know that how to take different kinds of substances, whether it be just as simple as coffee or just things much more severe to help us to feel good. We know how to get in a relationship to feel good, which is dependent on someone else. All sorts of different things, but we're not taught how to feel good from the inside. So again, we got to take care of the stuff from the past, learn and experience how to live passionately in the present, and then we're really ready to really learn and sustain our true purpose in life, okay? So to loop back to your question, what I see is that people just completely transform and get to enjoy loving life to the fullest, as opposed to, like you said, like, oh, parents said this, and, and just living in the past, really, for the most part, which I think so many of us do. Yeah. Also, you have a specialty in something that is very unique in the hypnosis world, which is autism and Asperger's. So tell us a little bit about how you got into that and what kind of results you've seen as a result of working with these people born with these conditions. Yeah, it's actually kind of it's an interesting story how I first got into it. It was actually I teach as well as have my private practice, and I had a student call me and book for the class that I taught. And it seemed like it was pretty easy to book. And then he called me back the next day, I believe it was, and he shared with me that his partner informed him that he should probably tell me that he has Asperger's. Okay. Now, at the time, I had no idea what Asperger's was. Didn't know anything about it, but he was making it sound like it was something really serious. So I'm like just kind of playing it cool and being like, oh, okay, no problem. In the meantime, I'm literally like Googling asparagus, literally, because I had no idea what it was. And so I Googled it and found out what it was and just started, I didn't really research too much about it. I guess I just kind of trusted my intuition that it was best if I didn't know everything that's supposed to be wrong with people with Asperger's, but I did just enough just to get to the gist of it, so I had him in the class, and all that I was concerned about when I teach, I pride myself on really making sure that people get a tremendous amount on a personal development, because I believe that we need to take care of our own stuff, so I want them to take care of their own stuff in my class so that they are more prepared to be helping other people. So nonetheless, I just asked him, just like everybody else, what do you want? Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Okay. And for him specifically, he just wanted to be able to feel emotions stronger. Okay, or actually, he wanted to feel emotions, period. He had a very limiting belief at that time that he couldn't feel emotions. Okay. So in some very, very creative ways, I'll cut to the chase of one of the most interesting ways, actually, as I was figuring it out myself. I had no formal training and how do I do this, whatnot. Well, actually, I did start out with this, with the whole class. Worked for you. Worked for me. Exactly. Didn't necessarily work for him, not at first, because I remember, because I always do that with all my classes, actually. I just, have people do the smiling exercise. Nonetheless, he asked me, he says, well, what do you do if you can't smile? And I said, well, let me ask you, are you asking for yourself or for someone else? And he's like, for him. And he had the belief that he couldn't smile, okay? And
Wow.
yeah, well, just like...
It's a belief because we do it naturally. I was watching you now and you've smiled like 3 times in the last 2 minutes.
Well, and so could he.
Yeah,
But,
I believe
yeah.
he could. He didn't believe he could.
Exactly.
Which
exactly.
is an important point here.
Exactly. And it's certainly not just people with Asperger's, but people in general can be really good at BSing themselves. So nonetheless, that was one of the things that he was BSing himself about. So I didn't push, because if you push too much, then you're going to get resistance. So I just said, well, can you do me a favor? Can you just simply take your fingers and just move them like this? I literally just kind of just paste his belief system, and he would do that. And literally, it was like, he wasn't giving me much at first. So I was like, okay, all I want you to do is just keep practicing that, okay?
Baby steps.
Exactly. And I think it was a couple days later, again, this was during a training, it was a 16-day intensive. Actually, I take that back, it was a 7-day intensive. He was only there for the practitioner portion. And nonetheless, at a certain point, he actually scared me because I just turn around. I'm in the class, and I turn around, and I see him like right here in front of me, just, and I'm like, can I help? I'm like, oh, you're smiling. He's like, yeah. So, yeah, exactly.
That's a good success story.
Yeah.
So what went on to become of him?
Well, I can actually say, because he gave me full permission. Now, of course, we have total client confidentiality, okay? Very interesting guy. I won't get into all the details, really for the sake of time. He actually gave me full permission to share everything, and he's actually well known in a certain community. He is actually, your listeners or viewers will find this interesting. He's actually a well-known author in the quote-unquote master-slave community, okay? Yeah. And that was my thought at first. When he told me, and I was.
And he supposedly couldn't feel anything, which is interesting.
Well, it was very interesting, and I could play Freud all over the place and make up all kinds of theories. But I did kind of think that, well, yeah, for him, he felt that he needed to go to extremes to be able to feel. But it was a really interesting guy, really good guy. And I learned, by the way, not through experience, okay, didn't really have a desire to get into the master-slave community, but I learned just by listening to him that it's not nearly as cray-cray as a lot of us, dare I say virgins in that community?
Good word.
Might think. At first I just remember I was like, oh, really? But quite frankly, in my opinion, it's just really kind of a swingers community. But they just, exactly. So to each his own.
Wait, so what else have you helped people with Asperger's and autism with?
Much more conservative issues, that's for sure. Nonetheless, the most common, specifically for Asperger's, or also what's known as high-functioning autism, which is, they kind of go back and forth on whether they're the same thing or not. But nonetheless, the number one most common thing that I find is just people, whether they be kids or adults, wanting to fit in. Just wanting to be able to socialize.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Because they're always the one on the outside because they've got that different thing about them.
Exactly. In reality, in my strong opinion, they're all a bunch of Einsteins. Maybe not.
Tell us about that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm interested in that. The savant.
Yeah.
So have you helped them through hypnosis really tap into that and
absolutely
and utilize that? Because that would be fascinating.
Absolutely.
Because our mind works in ways that and the term they used to use in the past was idiot savant. I don't get that. The guy can memorize a whole phone book and you're calling him an idiot savant.
Exactly.
But I guess because they don't have the same belief systems as us and their brain is somehow different, they can do these amazingly outstanding things that we don't even know how they do. We can't comprehend how it's possible that you could say, I want you to turn to page 780, and the fourth column down, I want you to tell me the name and the address and the person in the phone book, and they can do it. Like,
Yep.
so what have you been able to do with hypnosis and helping them to tap into savant-like qualities?
The major difference is I encourage them. Every single time that I've had somebody come into my office with Asperger's or high-functioning autism, I don't work very much with the very low-functioning autism. I'm very open to it. I just haven't worked with it yet. They're not coming my way. But that said, the very first thing is I tell them is I say, literally, I look at their intake form, or their specifically when I do, just to play it safe. Some people say I don't have to, but I like to play it safe. I do get a signature from their psychotherapist saying that they're in approval of me working with them. Okay, so nonetheless, when I look at it, I always just look at it, even if I already know, and I say, awesome. And then they're kind of like, well, what? And I'm like, oh, well, you have Asperger's. That's awesome. And they're kind of little bit break their state a little bit, but I'm like, yeah, it's just to this day, every single person I've met with every single person I've worked with high functioning autism or Asperger's has been incredibly brilliant. And yeah, and they're just like, because they're so used to, oh, I'm sorry, you have this. And I encourage, they're superpowers. They've got superpowers.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They do. They have superpowers.
Yeah, and that's really it's not complicated. The big difference I work with is that I encourage them to be more like that. Now I do also fully understand and help them with the overstimulation issues that can happen.
So, tell me about that. I'm unfamiliar
absolutely.
with that.
Yeah, well, the reason that they're able to point out something that's in a book is the same reason that when we can help somebody to remember a license plate, for example. Okay. In hypnosis, we're helping them to be able to enhance their visualization skills and to zoom in on it. Okay, they're already natural at that. They're brilliant at that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So sometimes they get too intense, too focused.
Well, not just that. It's just there's too many different things. Like, this doesn't bother me at all, but wow, could that light right there really bother someone with autism? Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Even they could get potentially obsessed with it. People can't see it, but on the camera there's a little
level.
Thank you. The audio level that goes up and down. They could potentially get too much of that, and then the air conditioner's not on right now, but if it was, that could add, and just all of these different things.
Wow.
Because their senses are so heightened.
What would it be like living in a world like that?
It would suck if you didn't know how to handle it.
So you teach them how to handle that.
Absolutely.
How to block out. Because hypnosis can do those things, by the way. We can completely, like people with sports performance enhancement.
Absolutely.
I teach them how to blur everything around them. There's all these amazing techniques with hypnosis that can cause you to focus more on one thing and close out the other things.
Absolutely. And really, that's exactly what I do with them. I work in the same way, and they're generally easier to work with.
Right.
As long as you do one specific thing, not just one specific thing, you have to be flexible just like with everything else, but the major thing is be logical about it.
Oh, they're very analytical and logical.
If you but not just, we've all had those really overly analytical clients that are just so analytical, and there's a lot of secondary gain to holding on to their stuff. They're like, but you just want to take
so they're very procedural and systematic, as long as you
very oftentimes. Well, not just that, they'll figure out the procedure and even the system.
Oh, really?
As long as you're logical with what it is and why it's important, and just how to do it. Like, just explain to them just that, okay, here's the thing. I like to use Spider-Man references. Where I just I say, with great power comes great responsibility, and you have great power. Let me teach you more about how your brain works, and help them to understand. So they're nodding their head when they're like, yes, finally, somebody that understands. I'm saying, well, what I'll usually say, also, by the way, with people with very high anxiety, they tend to be very visual. I'll usually say, well, because I don't want to pretend that I know it all, I'll just say, my guess is, and I could be wrong, my guess is that you're a very visual person. Would you agree with that? Okay. And they're like, yes, absolutely. Okay. And I say, well, that's the thing. Your greatest gift, your gifts rather, can feel like your worst enemy because nobody's ever taught you how to use those gifts. Okay. Now you're talking to somebody who has learned how to use these gifts, how to use this user's manual for your brain. Okay. And especially in NLP, there's very often of course the programming metaphor, neuro-linguistic programming, and how we just quote unquote reprogram people, which I honestly think with most people that's not necessarily accurate because I think it should have been called neuro-linguistic practicing in my opinion. But with people with high-functioning autism and Asperger's, and even a little bit lower on the chain, again, as long as you're logical about it, they will make that change. They will reprogram that. Okay, they kind of are more like computers. I don't want to say the word 3 times because then Star Trek people will start showing up. Nonetheless. Probably just lost about half your audience. Sorry, I'm a Star Wars guy. But nonetheless, Spock and Data.
Data, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know for a fact, but I think especially with Data, they literally modeled
that would make
Asperger's.
Sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so just looking at it in that way, as long as you're logical about it, okay? Because most of the time they want the change as well, okay? And there's generally very little secondary gain most of the time. Occasionally there might be a little bit, but not like most of us drama kings and drama queens that want to hold on to our stuff sometimes, like some of our clients.
Explain secondary gain so that people understand.
Absolutely.
And why somebody would unconsciously hold on to a problem. And I say the word unconsciously because they're not aware they're doing it.
Correct.
And
absolutely.
A lot of the times they're not aware of the secondary gain.
Absolutely. Secondary gain is simply when we're getting something out of holding on to a problem. Okay. If you're familiar with parts work or parts therapy, for the most part, that's to address the quote-unquote secondary gain, to help people to figure out what they're getting out of something. Okay, one of the most common examples is just like smoking cessation. Okay, we know it's bad for us. I have yet to have somebody walk into my office that hasn't tried before that doesn't want to quit. They want to quit, but they've been getting many things out of continuing to smoke. Okay, so we actually, with smokers, we really address the secondary gain and help them to have more of that. Teach them how to relax. If and when there's things more significant, help them to address that. But it's just simply when we're getting something out of whatever problem it is, and even then we know how to change. Weight loss being a great example.
Yeah. Well, people eat and smoke to relieve stress.
Exactly.
So unconsciously, and a lot of them don't even know why they're eating or smoking. But with hypnosis, we bring that up to consciousness, and a lot of times it's to try and get some need met, to have some peace of mind, unconsciously they only have one option. But with the hypnosis, we widen all those options. So we give them new and healthy ways to behave and to address those needs, which is the secondary gain. So.
Absolutely. And even though I kind of dogged on secondary gain a little bit, it's always a positive thing.
Yeah, it's always.
We don't want to ignore. We want to say, oh, it's just secondary gain. That's whatever. Just blah blah blah. That's important. Especially if it's something that's so harmful for them. If they're whatever smoking, for example, we want to address that secondary gain. Again, I just find that as a simple example. Let's say somebody with Asperger's wants to quit smoking. Okay, as long as I explain it logically, very seldom do we have to address much of any secondary gain.
Geez, they almost sound easier to work with.
Oh, they are. They are.
Maybe I'll come to your class.
Yes. No,
Sometimes I tell you, people can give us a run for our money once in a while.
Oh, absolutely, and so can people with Asperger's or autism.
But I like the idea that if it can make sense to them, they're going to just reprogram everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely.
So another process that you're going to be talking about at this conference this weekend, and a little known thing, is that NLP/hypnosis, neuro-linguistic programming, can help people to retrain their immune system to things they were once allergic to, thereby not having the allergic response anymore. So tell us about that.
Yeah,
Help
absolutely.
explain that to our audience, how that's possible, because we have a belief that once you have an allergy, it's always an allergy.
I used to believe that. Also, one of the easier things to work with, quite frankly.
Right.
I refer to it. I even have a product that I'll be selling downstairs that I refer to as how to help most people overcome most allergies in as little as one session. It's usually quite easy. That said, what it really comes down to, and I don't take credit for figuring this stuff out. It's actually Robert Dilts, one of the really.
He's brilliant.
Yeah.
He wrote an encyclopedia on NLP.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Talk about.
And
he might be a bit
he's
Asperger's.
probably got some Asperger's in him. Okay.
He's a genius.
He's an absolute genius. He's an absolute genius.
With the energy of Jesus, he's wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely, and a really, exactly. He's a really, really good guy. Really good guy. So nonetheless, he started studying. He's a very curious guy, incredibly curious guy. And when he gets curious about something, look out. So he's going to study it and he's going to understand the strategies of it. And so nonetheless, he wanted to figure out, so what's going on with allergies? And what he found, and not just, he didn't just, find it by playing doctor. He looked at the medical books and he talked to doctors. He did lots of different things. And what he found was that an allergy is simply a phobic response of the immune system. Okay? Which, if you think about, it's really pretty logical. Whether it's right or wrong, whether we like it or not, as human beings, we tend to fear what we don't know. And we tend to fear what we don't understand, okay? And quite frankly, this is literally how racism happens. Now, it doesn't excuse it, doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean that we're not supposed to use our logical minds to change that. I like to think most people do. But when something is foreign to us, we oftentimes will send out, oh, it's foreign, it's dangerous, send out specifically the histamine. Because we look at it as a quote-unquote pathogen, okay? A bad guy, if you will. As opposed to what's referred to as a macrophage, okay? Which is, just, for example, like some simple dust that most people are fine with, like, a little dust, a little sneeze, no big deal, just sweep that out of the system. But if something's considered a pathogen, then it sends out literally killer T cells, it sends out the big guns to attack it. And that's what literally will happen with a lot of different kinds of allergies. And it really made sense to me when I started thinking about back when the first time I ever had allergies. Never had allergies in my life until I moved to New York City. And I had allergies so bad there that literally I lost my voice for a couple days. It was pretty bad. And it made sense because there was probably something in the pollen, something in the air that, West Coast California boy was not used to. And so my body reacted. I didn't know at the time how to relieve allergies in the ways that I do now, but that's basically what would happen. And it can even it can happen with food intolerances as well. I could practically do a milk commercial for how many people I've helped to be able to digest dairy, which. Fairly so. I know that many people will say, well, we're not supposed to drink milk anyway, and I won't necessarily disagree with that. But I will say, it's our mind, it's our body. We get to be in charge of it. And just because somebody has had an intolerance to dairy doesn't mean they have to keep that. And that doesn't mean I'm going to tell people like, oh, you have to drink milk. I
just don't want to suffer when you do have a little piece of cheese or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so how does the NLP/hypnosis process help with changing that response?
Yeah, well, there's a various, again, the one that I teach is actually originally created by Robert Dilts. I've modified it ever so slightly, not much to take much credit for it, really. But nonetheless, it helps to change the fear response, the phobic response through a very, very specific technique that's similar and yet different than many other phobia techniques. Okay, one of the things that, quite frankly, one of the things that I do differently is just through experience I've found that as opposed to a phobia of, let's say somebody has a phobia of snakes or something like that, I tend to find that, yes, it's important to do that fast, okay, to really do that fast. For whatever reason, I've just found that doing it in a deeper, more relaxing way and just doing more unconscious gradual changes with allergies, I've just found that to be more effective. But it's a very similar process. Yeah.
So what are the results? What have you seen when you help people? Tell us, because people have no idea how powerful this is.
Yeah, I won't. I'll be careful not to say the 100% because people always give you a hard time about that. But damn, close.
What kind of allergies have you helped people overcome?
Wow, so many. Again, wheat and dairy, so common. I've not only. It's always fun for me when my students go out and do this stuff, and I love hearing when my students go out and they become the hero of the neighborhood by saving the family dog. Which one that I'm thinking of at the top of my head did that. Like right after my training, he goes out and obviously they're over, putting him on a little bit of a pedestal, but what's wrong with that? He's having fun with it. But they literally were treating him like a god. Like, how are you doing this? How are you?
Is he working with allergies?
Yeah. He was just going out, because it's simple. It's not a complicated one. Right. And so he just realized, wow, I can do this, and I'm going to keep doing it. And he was helping people overcome a lot of allergies that they had been suffering from, taking all those medications for. Yep, exactly. Yeah, and again, pet hair. There was at least one that I remember him really excited about, which was with the family dog, where they were this close to getting rid of the dog. Yeah.
Okay, so you are an NLP and hypnosis instructor teaching in many countries around the world. What else have you seen in your classes when you have taught people to utilize their minds both for themselves and their clients?
Let's see. Ask me that again.
Because you're teaching in many places around the world, and you've got these students, and you gave us a perfect example, going out and just getting rid of everyone's allergies. Mm-hmm. What are some other miraculous transformations you've seen in either your students or things that they've worked with?
One of them, interestingly enough, everything happens for a reason. Is the segue to all of this. The same student that I just mentioned, that I just can feel his excitement of going out and doing this. He was a student that actually decided to train with me, not so much to learn how to be a practitioner at first. He lived in the UK, and he was going through some really major challenges. And to this day, I don't know who specifically it was. I don't know if it was one of my former students. I used to teach in the UK. But nonetheless, somebody said to him, you have to go to the US and train with Kevin. He can help you, I promise you. And he, so obviously called me, and I booked him as a student. And about a week before the training, he emailed me, and he said to me, just simply, Kevin, I don't know what to do. He was saying, my mother just died. Okay, and he's asking me, should I come? Should I not come? What should I do? And I'm just like, I can't tell you what to. This is what I'm saying. It's like I can't tell you what to do, but I fully support whatever decision. And don't worry about refund. You've got it. Don't whatever. Okay, and just give me a call if there's anything I can do to help. And he very quickly emailed me back, and he just simply said, he's a very proper Englishman. And he just said, "Thank you, Mr. Cole. That's all I needed to know. Now I feel totally confident that I'm making the right decision to train with you." He very, very interesting as a practitioner side of things, like, oh, interesting case study, but also very powerful, where when he was in the class, he's proper Englishman. So I didn't really pick up on, looping back to the, lack of emotions. I didn't pick up on it at first because I wasn't just totally targeted on him either. But nonetheless, in NLP, we teach something called eye accessing. I won't explain all that because that'd take a long time. But nonetheless, in general, when people look down and to their right, okay, we tend to be processing feelings when we're doing that, okay? And as they were just doing an exercise, one of the assistants, somebody that had already trained with me, came up to me and said, Kevin, have you noticed that so-and-so he's not looking down and to the right? Like, look at how one of the other students was working with him on something, and they had a table right here in front of them, and he was on this side, and the practitioner was on this side. And so I said, I don't know, but I get curious too. So I'm like, I don't know, let's find out.
It's very interesting, everybody, to see how people access their information and the structure of their thinking, which is actually what you teach, isn't it? Which is NLP. Exactly, but we'll talk about that after. So he didn't go down and...
Well, yeah, so that's what I said. I just kind of just pulled the student aside and said, hey, do you mind if I step in here for just a moment? Just kind of just curious about something. And so I did what's called a hand-eye lead. Okay, didn't explain anything. I just simply asked him, just do me a favor, just move your eyes down here. And as I'm moving my hands down, he started to follow a little bit, but then he literally started to sweat and he started to shake. Okay, he was just like,
there was a reason he wasn't going there.
Exactly. And so I was like, okay, that's all I need to know. So do me a favor, just go ahead and take a few deep breaths in, okay? And so that told me, at the very least, okay, that's a red flag. Now, I'm not scared of red flags. I actually consider it a gold mine with the right approach. But nonetheless, meaning specifically, it's like, wow, we're about to help him to have a huge transformation. That said, it wasn't the time, it wasn't the place, and even if it was in my office, it wouldn't be ready to just be like, let's figure out what's going on there.
That.
Yeah, it could be like literally just, big boom. So nonetheless, gradually, at a certain point, that's right, I remember now. So I intentionally asked him to be a demo, so just not immediately after that, didn't make a big deal out of it, just kind of just let it be. And then I asked him to be a demo for something as far as just how or just something like really just warming people up to learning how the neurology works, learning how to just take a positive feeling and build on it, okay? So I asked him to be a demo for that, and he was fine with that. And then I asked him, I said, so now, I had him remembering, I remember, a positive memory where just anytime you have a parent, one of the best things that you can do to really help them and to just really be feeling amazing is remembering the first time that they were holding their child in their arms, okay? Now, smart man also learns from other people's mistakes, and I only did this once and I've never done it again. Meaning specifically now, I'm very careful to always mention the first time that you were holding that baby and it was safe, you were safe, and everyone around is safe, okay? Because not all births go perfectly, okay? Nonetheless, that one was fine. But nonetheless, so I'm having him just imagine holding this baby, and I asked him, I said, now, as you feel these wonderful feelings, I'm assuming he is, but he wasn't. As you feel these wonderful feelings, I want you to just notice where you're feeling it in your body and just point in your body point to where you're feeling these wonderful feelings. Most people will go right here. I don't want to touch it because of the mic. Most people go right about here, okay? He literally was like, about there. That's literally, no.
To us NLP people, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
He said out there.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. Yeah. So he wasn't even allowing him to feel the good stuff.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That's what Kevin meant by such an interesting case.
Yeah.
The way people's minds are structured and generate things is so fascinating.
Yeah.
So he couldn't feel things, he put them out there.
Exactly. He basically, and I'm playing a little bit of Freud here, but
It's connected.
Exactly. Basically,
from all his feelings, good and bad.
Exactly.
Right.
You've done this before, haven't you?
NLP. I studied with Robert Dilts.
There you go. Exactly. It's just like at least one thing, and probably many things, happened at some point in his life where he just said, screw it, shut it down.
Shut it all down.
Shut it all
Good and
down.
bad.
It's even the good is not worth it because we're opening up to that. And that's where he was at. So we took, and I just, as I always like to say, we only need this much in the beginning, okay? So we just, no hurry, okay? Especially because he was in intensive training. And, one of the things I love about trainings is that I can help people in a much shorter period of time than my one-on-one clients. It would have taken a lot longer if it was a one-on-one client. That's somewhat beside the point. Nonetheless, just, started with this much, and then we gradually build on it. And also what's great about it is the fact that I'm not the only one helping people in these classes, okay? All the other students are helping them to build up more positive feelings as we go, okay? So had a couple of really powerful, he had a couple of really powerful transformations, both gradually from just learning how to feel good, but also he did one where he had previously had over 30 years of chronic shoulder pain because he had a accident where his clavicle literally just went like this, and he was in a third world country at the time, and they instead of fusing it like this, did it like this, okay? Now that said, as crazy as it may sound, it's like, it doesn't matter, the body will the body will heal no matter what you do to it, pretty much, okay? But still, the chronic pain can still associate to the emotional components to that. And so, nonetheless, long story shorter, we did a process with him for a pain control technique, but we took it much further than I normally would just to help him to really take care of a lot of other stuff. And it was, I kind of pulled out all the stops just for the heck of it. But literally, there's a certain point, where I'm doing the work with him, and I'm not a huge guy, but I was literally sitting on a chair, putting all my weight on his shoulder to really test that. And the more that I did, the more weight I put on it, the more he did it. Just literally was just.
Oh, it's such a nice feeling when you get rid of pain.
Yeah.
It's so nice. So you really, he got a really transformative effect.
Absolutely, yeah.
Did he get his feelings back?
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's where, well, he did, he did it. I just, let some
we're
words.
Guides. We're guides.
Words come out of these faces. So nonetheless, that's the thing. That's sort of my approach. That is my approach. Whether it be pain control, whether it be anything else, it's about helping them to experience tremendous pleasure first. And that's what we really built up on. And I had planned on taking him back, doing some regression work, but I don't do traditional regression work. I have a different approach than traditional. Not that traditional is bad. So nonetheless, there was a certain point where it was an exercise that we were doing. I was actually having him as a demo. It was actually to remember a very positive experience. It wasn't the intention was to take him back to something negative. And actually, I wasn't even taking him back. It was just a very positive experience, but his mind, and which can happen, his mind basically just went back to what some would call a root cause of something, and that's when he let the traumas start coming up, and it was very intense for the classroom to witness because they got some real training there, but that said, they got to see how I did it with as little pain as possible, as much pleasure as possible, as quickly as possible without rushing it, okay, and as effective and efficiently as possible, okay. And I also like to add that I throw into my students as safely as possible as well, okay. And quite frankly, he'd remembered a birthday party that started out great, but then he remembered that his father came out with a belt, and then that created kind of a gestalt, if you will, where then now he's remembering the nuns that were not kind.
So he had quite a few traumas built up.
Exactly.
So here's the interesting thing. Kevin's a trainer in NLP, and a very good one at that. And just to let you know how specific for our audience, because NLP can get so specific. I remember in my training when our assignment was to have somebody think about their problem. And I had this guy who had no accessing cues. What means is he would just stare straight ahead. His eyes wouldn't move into his visual quadrants, his auditory, or his feelings. And so I bring him up. It was with Robert Dilts, Tim Halbaum, and Susie Smith.
Also excellent trainers, by the way.
Amazing. Yeah. So I bring him up. Tim, watch this. Think about your problem. Guy's like dead straight staring. I said, I can't see where it's going. Tim goes, oh yes you can. He goes, look, his pores are opening and his upper lip is swelling. So this is how precise and specific NLP can get. Now I was just new at that. Somebody who's been doing it like you for years will pick up on these cues and be able to, of course, transform them if they needed. Like with this gentleman, you helped him feel again, you helped him with numerous things. But it's a really amazing thing.
Interesting enough, as far as when people aren't, when they're just looking straight ahead, in general, not much of a generalization, most likely they're very visual. And it's just that they don't have to, they're just fully associated to it and they're just really there. And so they don't necessarily have to, traditionally we look up when we're visualizing, but they don't necessarily have to do that.
I didn't even know that after 12 years, so thank you.
Yeah.
I did not know that was
in general, just about everything's a generalization.
I just know that Tim picked up on the fact that his pores were slightly dilating and his upper lip was slightly, it's just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing. So for those of you who may be living in other countries, do you have products for
yes. Well, actually, I don't have many products. I was just yes. Well, as far as trainings, yes, I do train. I've actually been on a little bit of a hiatus this year, but I will be doing more trainings in 2017. I'm going to be in Vancouver in November, doing a training there. Because you mentioned, yes, sometimes other places do. They'll just say, I want you to come. Exactly, and that's.
So if you want to bring Kevin in, you can get a hold of him.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sort of leaning more towards that these days. I really like when other people do all the organization for me, and I just show up and do my thing.
Do you offer any trainings for people to purchase though, if they can't make it? Because we're in a global world, so not everybody can fly halfway across the world.
You mean online training? I'm assuming? Yeah. I don't currently. Kind of an internal parts conflict that I'm working out within myself. I'm not a big fan of online training being the core foundational training. I think it's fantastic for continuing education, but I'm not a big fan of, especially, and at least until we do have the Star Trek technology where, I've got the holographic images of everybody and I can actually see that they're really doing good work and I can listen the way I listen like a safecracker, really, and so make sure I'm helping them to really become competent. But that said, I don't currently have online training, but
if you'd like to fly to one of the locations where Kevin is,
yeah, absolutely. Give me a call. Check me out online.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah. Now, there were one thing in all your years of experience and your personal story that you could leave people with about the possibilities. When we tap into the unconscious, we crack the structure of our thinking in a way that, like you did with the gentleman, the possibilities that are available to us when we utilize our minds in this way.
Infinite. I don't know if it's answering your question, but I'll just say this. Put aside all fear and just focus on the person in front of you. Focus on the fact that they wouldn't be there if they weren't reaching out. And you absolutely can and will find a way to help them. Even if you don't, like Asperger's, I had never worked with it, but I focused on what does this individual want. And I use the toolbox that I have, and this was many years ago. My toolbox is bigger now. Okay, I would have done things differently, and some things I wouldn't have. Some things I've learned from that. So just, when we get nervous, it's because we're focused on ourselves.
Okay, and what about for those who aren't hypnotists, those who are just looking to work on some of their things that are stopping them or disempowering them? What would you like to leave them with about the possibilities for them when they learn to use the owner's manual of their mind?
So, more things than I could list, but I'll leave with two things. First of all, truly the only thing standing in our way, and I point the finger at myself, okay? Because there's things that you know, I can procrastinate on as well, or whatever, okay? Really the only, I mean, you've heard it before, but I'm going to say it again because it's true. Really the only thing standing in your way is you. And something that you might not have heard before, okay? All too often, you know, people want to come to us for the motivation. Yeah, we can help. Absolutely, we can help in so many different ways. But you know what's going to give you the motivation? Starting. Just taking action, okay? An object in motion tends to stay in motion, and so does motivation. Just taking the action, starting doing it, okay? No one ever in the history of time has ever walked out of the gym and say, yeah, I really shouldn't have done that, okay? They had multiple times we had, you know, we're like, oh, I got to push myself to get into that gym, but recognize that life is a gym, okay? It doesn't matter what it is, just start doing it, okay? Just start taking action and perfect as you go.
Great advice. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. Yeah, let me give you a hug. Absolutely. Yeah.
There you have it. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.